The sun burned white over the canyon, and the air shimmered with heat so fierce it made the rocks breathe fire. The desert was alive with sound, the low hum of cicadas, the whisper of sand blowing across dry stone, and the labored breathing of a man racing against time. Jacob Cole, a rancher from Abilene, had been riding for 2 days straight. He'd followed a trail of broken brush and torn fabric since dawn, praying he wasn't too late. The tracks led down into the ravine, to the kind of land no one should cross alone. That's when he heard it. A cry, faint, desperate, carried by the wind. "Help! Please, someone!" Jacob's heart jumped. He spurred his horse toward the sound, dirt flying behind him. When he rounded the bend, the sight froze him where he sat. There, half buried in a patch of pale yellow quicksand, was a young woman. Her long dark hair clung to her face, and her arms trembled as she tried to pull herself free. The more she struggled, the deeper she sank. "Hold on!" Jacob shouted, leaping from his horse. "Don't move." Her terrified eyes locked on him. I can't! It's pulling me down." He ran toward her, boots sinking slightly in the soft ground. The air smelled strange, wet, rotten, like death. He grabbed a fallen branch and stretched it out. "Grab this!" She reached, her fingers brushing the edge, but the mud pulled at her again. "Deeper!" she cried in panic. "Please, I can't take it anymore. It's pulling me under." Jacob's chest clenched. He dropped to his knees and inched closer, digging the branch deeper into the quicksand until she could grab hold. Her hands slipped once, then found a firm grip. "Hold tight!" he grunted, pulling with all his strength. The mud hissed as it released her, inch by inch, like it didn't want to let her go. She gasped, clawing at the ground, until Jacob reached forward and caught her by the waist, dragging her out in one last, desperate pull. They both collapsed on the sand, breathing hard. Her body shook, covered in mud, her dress torn and soaked. For a moment neither spoke. The only sound was the rasp of their breathing and the wind sighing through the canyon walls. "You're safe now," Jacob said softly, brushing the grit from her face. She looked at him, eyes dark as night, filled with exhaustion and disbelief. "You saved me." "You're lucky I was nearby," he said. "This land swallows people whole." Her lips trembled. "I was trying to find the river crossing. I thought this was it." "You're far from any river," Jacob said gently. "Where are you headed?" She hesitated before answering. "South, to Red Mesa." The name made Jacob stiffen. Red Mesa was Apache territory, dangerous even for men like him. "You shouldn't be alone out here," he said. "What's your name?" "Lila," she whispered. "My father was a trader. Raiders took our wagon. I ran. I didn't know where else to go." Jacob's jaw tightened. "You've been walking through this desert since then?" She nodded weakly. 2 days, maybe 3. He helped her to her feet. She wobbled, dizzy, and he caught her before she could fall. Her skin was hot to the touch, fever from heat and exhaustion. "Easy now," he murmured. "You need water and shade." He guided her to his horse and lifted her gently into the saddle. The animal snorted nervously, sensing her fear, but Jacob's calm hand steadied both horse and rider. The nearest shelter was an old trapper's cabin, 1/2 mile east. By the time they arrived, the sun was setting, painting the sky red and gold. Inside, the air was cooler, thick with the smell of old wood and dust. Jacob poured her a canteen of water. She drank greedily, drops running down her chin. "Slow down," he said, a hint of a smile in his voice. "You'll make yourself sick." She stopped, blushing faintly. "I'm sorry. It's just, I didn't think I'd ever taste water again." Jacob built a small fire, its flickering light warming the shadows. For the first time since morning, the tension began to fade. "Thank you," she said softly. "You didn't have to stop for me. A man who doesn't help in this land doesn't deserve to live in it," he replied. Her gaze lingered on him, the worn hat, the rough stubble, the quiet strength in his eyes. She wanted to ask him why he was out here alone, but something about his silence told her he carried his own ghosts. The fire cracked. Outside, coyotes began to howl. "You should rest," Jacob said, laying his bedroll near the fire. "We'll ride at dawn. I'll take you to Red Mesa." "And then?" she asked. He hesitated. "Then you'll be safe." But as he said the words, a strange unease crept through him, a feeling that Red Mesa held more danger than the desert itself. Lila turned to face the fire, her expression softening as exhaustion took her. "Thank you, Jacob. I owe you my life." He looked at her, the flames dancing in her eyes, and for a moment he forgot the loneliness that had followed him for years. "You don't owe me anything," he said quietly. "Just stay alive." As night deepened, Jacob stayed awake, listening to the wind outside. Something about this woman, her voice, her courage, the strange twist of fate that had brought her into his path, stirred something inside him he hadn't felt in years. But he didn't yet know that Lila carried more than gratitude. She carried secrets, and before the next sunset, those secrets would drag both of them deeper, into danger, into loyalty, and into a kind of bond neither had ever known. The morning light came pale and cold, washing over the desert in soft gold. Jacob Cole stirred first, his eyes opening to the faint crackle of the dying fire. Lila slept near the embers, wrapped in a blanket that was too big for her frame, her breathing shallow but steady. He stood, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. Outside, the desert stretched for miles, endless, silent and unforgiving. The faint cry of a hawk echoed above the cliffs. He poured the last of his coffee into a tin cup and stared at her for a moment, wondering what kind of life could drive someone to cross a land like this alone. When she stirred, her eyes fluttering open, he greeted her with a quiet, "Morning," she smiled weakly. "Still alive?" "Still alive," he said. "And we'll stay that way if we ride soon." He handed her a strip of dried meat and a canteen. She ate slowly, her hands trembling less than they had the night before. But there was something in her eyes, a shadow that hadn't been there before. "Jacob," she said suddenly, "if we make it to Red Mesa, do you promise not to tell anyone you saw me?" He frowned. "Why would I do that?" Her gaze fell to the floor. "Because there are people looking for me, and if they find me, they'll kill us both." Jacob froze. The air in the cabin seemed to thicken. "Who's after you, Lila?" She hesitated, voice cracking. "Men from the fort, and others, bounty men. They think I stole something." "Did you?" he asked quietly. "No," she said quickly. "Not money, not gold, just something they want back." Her words carried a weight that made his stomach twist. He exhaled slowly, looking out toward the horizon. "We'll talk on the trail." By midday they rode across the high plains. The air shimmered in waves, and the only sound was the creak of saddle leather and the steady rhythm of hooves. Lila sat behind him, holding tightly as the desert wind tugged at her hair. The silence between them wasn't empty. It was heavy with everything unspoken. Jacob could feel her tension, the way her fingers gripped the saddle whenever a bird's shadow passed too close. Finally, he broke the quiet. "You were heading for Red Mesa. Why?" She hesitated. "Because it's the only place they won't follow. Apache land," he said. "They don't take kindly to strangers." "I'm not a stranger," she said softly. "Not to them." He turned his head slightly, his brow furrowing. "What do you mean?" Her voice lowered. "My mother was Apache. My father was a trader from Santa Fe. I was born between two worlds, and never truly belonged to either." Jacob was silent for a long moment. "That's why you knew the old paths," he said finally. She nodded. "I thought I could make it on my own. I was wrong." The wind picked up, blowing grit across their faces. The land rose into red cliffs and narrow canyons, the border of Red Mesa territory. As they approached, Jacob spotted movement, riders on the ridge, silhouettes dark against the sky. He stopped his horse, scanning the horizon. "We're being watched," he muttered. Lila's hand tightened on his arm. "Don't run! If they think we're hiding, they'll attack." Sure enough, 3 riders descended from the ridge, Apache warriors, spears glinting in the sun. They approached slowly, their faces unreadable. The leader, a tall man with a feathered braid, stopped 10 paces away. His voice carried like thunder. "Why do you ride here, white man?" Jacob raised his hand slightly. "I mean no harm. The woman needed help." The warrior's eyes shifted to Lila and widened slightly. "You?" She lowered her head. "Chenoa," he said in disbelief, using an Apache name. "You dare return here?" Jacob looked between them. "You know him?" Lila nodded slowly. "He's my cousin, Taka." The warrior's gaze hardened. "You brought death to our people once. Why should we trust you now?" Jacob stepped forward. "She nearly died in the desert. Whatever happened before, she deserves to live." The tension was thick enough to choke. Then finally Taka dismounted and spoke in Apache to the others. They lowered their weapons. "You will come with us," he said. "The chief will decide." They rode into the valley of Red Mesa, a hidden world of sandstone cliffs and scattered huts, smoke rising in thin lines against the sky. It was quiet, almost hauntingly beautiful. The people stared as they entered, whispers following them. Some looked curious, others angry. The chief's lodge stood at the center. Inside, an old man sat wrapped in a red cloak, his eyes clouded with years of pain. He was Chief Nantan, the same man Jacob had once heard about in war stories. Taka spoke first in Apache, explaining what had happened. The chief listened without a word. Then his gaze fell on Lila. "You should not have come back," he said softly. "Your blood brought sorrow once before." Lila dropped to her knees. "I know, grandfather, but I had nowhere else to go." Jacob blinked in surprise. "Grandfather?" "You're his granddaughter," he whispered. She nodded faintly. The chief turned to Jacob. "You saved her life. For that, the spirits may yet forgive her." "I didn't do it for forgiveness," Jacob said. "I did it because no one deserves to die alone." The old man studied him for a long time before nodding. "You will stay until the sun sets twice. Then you will leave. The desert beyond is no place for you." Lila bowed her head, relief softening her shoulders. Jacob nodded in respect. That night, the tribe held a small fire to honor the spirits. Jacob sat near the edge of the gathering, watching as Lila spoke softly with her cousin. He could tell she was still uneasy, her hands fidgeting, her eyes darting toward the shadows beyond the firelight. When she finally joined him, she looked tired but calmer. "You've done enough for me," she said. "You can leave tomorrow if you want." Jacob shook his head. "Not while someone's still hunting you." Her eyes widened. "You believe me?" You don't strike me as a liar," he said. "Just someone running from the wrong kind of truth." For the first time, she smiled, a small, grateful smile that reached her eyes. But before either could say more, the sound of a gunshot split the night. The fire flared as chaos erupted. Warriors shouted, grabbing their weapons. Jacob leapt to his feet, pulling Lila behind a wagon. From the cliffs, a group of men in worn army coats descended, rifles flashing under the moonlight. "They found me," she whispered, voice shaking. Jacob chambered his revolver. "Then they'll wish they hadn't."